Welcome to another edition of Vintage Vault. I'm Alice Cooper, but you already know that. On this episode of the podcast, we're going to take it back to 1995. A good friend of mine, who's a great musician, in a band with me, even better actor. I don't know. Might be as good a guitar player as an actor. You may know him as Jack Sparrow, Edward Scissorhands, Willy Wonka, and 1,000 other characters that nobody wanted to play except him. Those names alone scream icon. It's the handsome and talented man called Johnny Depp. But to me, he's Johnny, the guy that plays guitar on my right. I met Johnny on the set of Dark Shadows. I was very honored that Tim Burton and he wanted me to be in that movie with them. In the movie, they go back to 1972, and his long-lost, I guess she would be his niece or something, says, well, if we're going to have a ball, we must have Alice Cooper. And so I show up and we do the whole thing. But the whole idea was I started telling him about the Hollywood Vampires, the drinking club. And at some point, I invited him down to the 100 Club in London and said, why don't you sit in with us? Because I knew he was a guitar player. And he sat in and he killed it. And at that point, I said, what if we did a band, like a bar band? And it was just honoring all of our dead drunk friends. And at that point, Joe Perry stuck his hand up. I'm in. Next thing you know, Duff McKagan, I'm in. And there was a band. So, do you know what Johnny Depp's first movie role was? Well, I'm going to tell you. First time on the big screen was 1984 in A Nightmare on Elm Street, where I think a bed eats him. He played the boyfriend of heroine Nancy Thompson, played by Heather Langenkamp, and one of Freddy Krueger's victims. We were both in Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare, a.k.a. the sixth and final installment of that series. I got to play Freddy's father, the very old hillbilly, dysfunctional father. And, everybody looked at this kid that was in this and they said, hey, isn't that the guy from 21 Jump Street? Yeah. I'll tell you the whole story about the 21 Jump Street, the one I heard. Okay. That one was that he was rooming with Nick Cage. Nick Cage got a call to audition for this show called 21 Jump Street. Johnny went along as, sort of like just to give him encouragement, sitting there playing guitar. Nick comes out of the rehearsal. The director looked at Johnny and said, we want you. Johnny goes, I'm a guitar player. I'm not an actor. And they said, you don't have to be an actor to be in this show. You just have to look good. And that's how we got his start in there. Of course, Nick Cage went on to win the Academy Award, and he's a terrific actor, and he's playing Joe Exotic. So come on. On this Vintage Vault, we're going to hear from Johnny right before his movie, Don Juan DeMarco, was released. In the movie, Johnny plays a man who believes himself to be Don Juan, the greatest lover in the world. Ha-ha!
It was really interesting for me because the idea of a person saying, I'm the world's greatest lover, is so out there to me. I mean, it's so insane that it's sane. I mean, that it's someone who can be that confident in himself and believe in himself that to that extent. There's something pretty fascinating about it. I could never blurt something like that in my life, but I mean, playing the role was a real challenge in a lot of ways, and I don't know. I haven't seen it yet, but I hope it comes out all right. A lot of people's perception of me, because of things that have been written in the press here and there, sort of slightly more tabloid type press. People think that people think of me. I get a feeling that people think I'm sort of somehow cocky, somehow there's an arrogance to me, and a confidence that isn't there, that doesn't exist, but it's sort of been fictionalized in the press, and it's just another piece of lint that I got to carry around in my pocket. But I prepared I'd done my best to get through the entire Lord Byron, Don Juan. I couldn't do it. I can admit it now. I couldn't get through it. It's really dense. It's beautiful, but it's thick. I watched some Fantasy Islands with Ricardo Montalban. I really did. I think he had a delivery that I thought was genius, Montalban. Watched some Fernando Lamas stuff. And just, worked on the accent. Worked on the accent a lot. I'm of the mind that, like, as an actor, that you can do a whole lot of preparation. You can over-prepare as well, and you can ruin things. You do your preparation, you take it, you throw it away, and then you go in and kind of you have a foundation. In other words, you have some stability in order to wing it, in order to be in the moment.
Talk about art imitating life. So let's hear how Johnny felt about being in the position of a leading man.
Ready to jump out of my skin, and that feeling comes back every now and again. Which is why Marlon stood up for me at that time, I think. It is an uncomfortable position to be in at times, but then it's awful to whine about something like that. I mean, I feel like, because I'm in a privileged position in a sense that I'm doing what I want to do. I get to make the films that I want to make, work with who I want to work with, make enough money to, live comfortably and all that stuff. So, and the idea that your private life is displayed before the public and kind of dissected, and a lot of fiction gets written about you, is a drag, a real drag. But it's kind of something you just sort of have to deal with. How do I deal with it? I don't read anything. I don't read anything. I haven't touched one of those magazines in probably 8 years, 7 years. Ever since they started writing fiction about me, I just decided it's not good to be a part of that.
Okay, and whatever you do in life, if you enjoy it, that's the key. I always tell my kids, I said, when you pick a career where you can't wait to get up in the morning and go to work. That you can't wait to go create what you're going to do. I don't care what it is. If you work in a bank, be the best bank guy. Be the most creative bank guy. If you're going to be an artist, do that. If you're going to be it doesn't matter. Just pick a career where you're going to enjoy doing it, or you're going to have a miserable life. I wanted to be a rock star at 15. I got to do that all my life. I mean, you can't have a better deal than that. You get to do your own songs. You get to write your own songs. And, for 60 years, how crazy is that? That's a privilege. But also, whatever you're doing, you got to take risks. No risk, no reward. I remember I called Johnny all the time the modern day Lon Chaney. Because Lon Chaney was the guy that was always in some kind of disguise, playing a character that was, you never knew what Lon Chaney looked like because he was always playing a character. I said, Johnny, you're the modern day Lon Chaney. You're always in prosthetics, and he says, that's one of the great compliments I've ever gotten, because I guess that was a hero of his. For a lot of people, artists especially, living life in the safe lane just doesn't cut it, at least for most of us. I mean, using a rope to hang myself on stage wasn't exactly what I thought I was going to be doing when I started. Picking up a 15-foot python was not being Mick Jagger. It was taking it to a different place. And I mean, if you're not taking risks, and believe me, some of the things that you try don't work. And you're standing out there with egg on your face. But sometimes it works so well that it becomes like part of your show. It becomes part of your image. I'm going to put this top hat on. I'm going to throw some makeup on. And next thing you know, that's your look. At the time, I wasn't thinking that. And I know that Johnny's just like that. Johnny just likes, he says, this script is totally me. And it's a script nobody else wanted to be in. So he gets in it and he makes it into something great.
And, the idea that you could fail horribly is also slightly seductive, I mean, that you could really make a huge mistake. It's kind of, I think that's important for an actor to do, to try and take risks. Yeah, I like it. I mean, it's stimulating. It keeps you busy, it keeps your brain busy, it keeps you working. I think I'm a romantic. I'm a realist also, but I think that I'm romantic and it's sort of an idealist in ways. But look at the guys like Hemingway in the 1920s who was living. He left the States and went to Paris and lived this beautiful kind of romantic expatriate existence. There with F. Scott Fitzgerald, this kind of artist community, and that was a pretty romantic move, but it worked out. Look at Robert Rodriguez, who did El Mariachi, who had brain scans so he could make money to finance his film. It's a pretty romantic, pretty passionate move.
I am not the kind of risk taker as jumping out of an airplane. It's a perfectly good airplane. I am not going to get in that airplane and jump out and go, oh, this is fun. My life is exciting enough. All right. There are certain stunts I would try if I thought I could do them right. But there's guys that do that really well. But for me, people say, I wouldn't put my head in a guillotine. I wouldn't put that snake around my neck. I wouldn't let them hang me. And I go, well, I learned how to do that. That's part of the gig. We're all a little crazy, but when you're creative, you have to let yourself be yourself. And thank God for that. Otherwise, we wouldn't have Edward Scissorhands. You
make your own reality. You don't have to stay in the little shell that was hammered out for you from childhood up to adult life. You don't have, we're all conditioned to live, the way that our parents want us to live. And it turns people into serial killers sometimes. I think that at a certain point you have to come out and live your life the way you want to live it and not have to answer to anybody. I don't want to answer to anybody. And I don't want to, I don't have to explain myself to a single soul on earth. And that's my reality. And it's freedom. And there have been a few here and there who said, why don't you, do some big blockbuster type thing. We know that this film is going to be a massive hit. Do it. I can't do that. I just couldn't. I'd feel ridiculous, and it wouldn't be about the work. And that's really what I'm in this for. I want to do the work. My agents, they already think I'm a little weird anyway, but they're very supportive in the things that I've wanted to do. And they also know that I was on a television series for 3 years that I was really miserable and hard to deal with. When you're miserable, it's you're not very nice to people sometimes.
Well, that's the attitude, I didn't live how my parents thought I was going to live. I certainly didn't follow in their steps, but they didn't discourage me. They kind of pushed me forward, saying, if you're going to do this, find something that nobody else has done. My dad was very creative that way. And my mom was the one that said, if you're going to do it, you don't stop until it's done. So as much as she didn't want me going to LA, she said, if you're going to do it, don't come back here with your tail between your legs. Go do it. To me, it was music or nothing. That was just the path my life took, starting back at Cortez High School in Arizona, or even before. In Johnny's case, he was 12 when he began playing guitar, and apparently he dropped out of Miramar High School in Florida to play rock and roll. I never considered dropping out. I knew I was going to say, Mom, Dad, I'm going to finish high school. I'm going to get a bachelor's degree in college, but the band is going to LA and we're going to go make it. And I think that was okay with them. The fact that I promised what I was going to do and I did it. Now, if something happens where the band doesn't happen, I can always come back. I've got a bachelor's degree and finish, whatever I was going to do. I had no secondary plan. Trust me. There was no plan B. It was be a rock singer or question mark. Back in the day, Johnny played in a local band called The Kids from about 1980 to 1984. And no, you've never heard of them, but they did the same thing the original Alice Cooper group did. They moved to L.A. to become rock stars. Now, I always tell young bands, move to L.A., that's certain suicide for your band, because L.A. is a band killer. People come to L.A., their bands make it, they meet girls, and all of a sudden now you can't find the band because they're in San Fernando Valley and one's in Laurel Canyon and one's out on the beach and you can't even rehearse. So if you're going to go to L.A. as a young band, sew yourself together. So you can't go, one guy can't go in one direction and other guys can't go in another direction. Johnny told me that they actually backed up Chuck Berry a couple times, and they were a very good band. I mean, they were a good rock band, but of course there's 900 great rock bands in LA. So you've got to find something that's going to make people go, oh. It just so happened that when Johnny took the acting gig, he realized that that would help pay for the band to live in LA. I think that was still his thing, was being in a band. The acting thing was just a thing to bring money in. And then all of a sudden he became huge. Johnny was already established as an actor when he opened his own rock club right on the Sunset Strip in Hollywood called the Viper Room. Perfect place for his band because it was just a great little rock dungeon.
I do still have the club, and the club's really great. It's been really great. I don't really have a musical career. I left that when I was about 20. I mean, I got a bunch of friends, you know, who we get together every now and then and play, and but I wouldn't. It's not. I mean, I'm not looking to be a rock star or anything like that. I'm not in that. I'm not trying to do that. I like the same thing with films. I really like the creative process in whatever you're doing, whether it's writing or painting or making noises with the instruments or acting. I really like the creative process, and I like collaboration.
Well, I guess you could say that Johnny's been making some pretty good noises with instruments as a singer with the Vampires, too. You know, he brought in all kinds of odd things. And I got to be honest with you, how it worked with the Vampires. Joe Perry and I backed off when it came to writing because we kind of wanted Johnny to bring in all these song ideas that didn't already have 20 or 30 albums behind it. In other words, original ideas that a producer would have chopped in half and moved over here and moved over there. We let all those things in. Some of the songs went on too long. And I said, no, let them go on too long. I said, that's not what we would do in Aerosmith or Alice Cooper. So let's make this original. So Johnny had a lot to do with the Rise album when it's the personality of it. And I got to say, when all the Vampires are in the room together, Johnny Depp is just another musician, one of the guys. Sometimes he'd send me the lyrics and I'd go, what are you talking about? I don't get any of these lyrics, but I'm not going to change them. I'm going to sing them the way that Alice Cooper would sing them. Explain these lyrics to me later. And that's why people would say, well, you know, it's weird. The Vampires album doesn't sound like either, you know, Alice Cooper or Aerosmith. You would think that influence would happen. And no, it sounded like the Hollywood Vampires. Johnny's got this great sound and vibe. He's a lot better guitar player than people give him credit for. I mean, he's playing with Jeff Beck sometimes. He's playing with McCartney sometimes. I think those people would not let him in the studio unless he had something going on.
I like everything from Billie Holiday, Louis Jordan, Cab Calloway to the Velvet Underground, the Butthole Surfers, Beethoven. I mean, I really like everything. I really like all music. Love jazz, yeah. Love Thelonious Monk. Love Charlie Parker. Love Bessie Smith. I mean, all of it. I even love the disco of the 70s now. I mean, I love ABBA. I love all of it. I really do. I just am.
Well, he kind of enjoys bands like the Butthole Surfers and things like that. And every once in a while, you know, I get it. It's his sense of humor, you know. But then he also likes Thelonious Monk and Bessie Smith and Billie Holiday and people like that who are. And I was very surprised that when I would come up with a reference of a band, he would know who I was talking about. It would be a band that didn't make it. I'd say, you know, there was this band called Clear Light that was on Elektra. And he goes, yeah. Those guys did this song and this song. And I was amazed that I didn't have to explain to him who I was talking about. I'd say, you know that bit in the Yardbirds song, Ain't Got You? Yeah. You mean this part? It's great when you have musicians standing there and talking the same language, where you don't have to explain what this is or what that is. Everybody gets what that was, you know. Anyway, on a side note, you should all know that I always thought I was Johnny Depp's biggest fan, but I guess there's someone who loves him more.
Oh, my mom?
Yeah.
Oh, she gives me all kinds of advice,
There's some
yeah.
little thing you could share.
Oh, she just, you want to know the truth? You want to know the truth about what my mother's
Yes.
advice to me is? The greatest thing she's ever said to me, and it's the one thing that keeps going through my head, honestly, is don't take any shit from anybody.
Good advice. I'll take that too. Unfortunately, Johnny's mom passed away in 2016. Otherwise, we might have hired her to manage the vampires. She was a pretty cool lady. All right, everyone. That's it from this edition of Vintage Vault. I hope you enjoyed a look back at my vampires bandmate, Johnny Depp. Stay safe and insane, everyone. I know you will. And stay tuned for a last word from Johnny.
It was exciting to work with Faye once again. We did a film together a few years ago. Going to work with Marlon Brando. Of course, at first, you know, there's that legend, there's that myth of Marlon Brando that kind of precedes everything else. But when I met him, I talked to him on the phone a couple of times before the film, before we'd met, and he seemed like a great guy. You know, he was real funny, made me laugh. You know, and when I met him, I was nervous on my way to go meet him, just because I'm a sucker like everybody else. You know what I mean? You just believe. You know, there's so many things swimming around in your head that you've heard, or that you've read, and that movies you've seen. But within the first 2 or 3 seconds, I was completely at ease, and all that vanished for me, and it just became, it just became Marlon. He just became this great guy, and it was. I'll tell you what was really nice. I hate to ramble like this, but what was really, really nice for me was to see that sort of image that was given to him, and this kind of mystery that surrounds the name Marlon Brando. He's an incredibly generous guy, a really generous guy, not just in work as an actor, of which he's one of the most generous I've ever worked with, but as a person, as a human being. He's really caring, he's really good-hearted, he's an amazing heart, and he's also one of the funniest people I've ever known. I mean, he could be the funniest person I've ever met. He has a real obtuse sense of humor, and one that I have a slightly, my sense of humor kind of veers slightly to the left. I have a odd sense of humor, and we clicked on that level. You know, we used to do things to kind of break each other up. You know, I'd write little notes on a piece of paper and hide them until they said action for him. You know, I was off camera, and I'd stick him to my head, and I'd look at him. You know. And he would read it and start, cackling, things like that. And when they asked me, who do you think should play the psychiatrist, I said Marlon Brando. They scooped their jaws off the floor, and they said, really? I mean, because I suppose they thought it was impossible to get Marlon to do a film, and they went to him and they pursued him and got him. I really felt that was the way to go, and I had a hard time seeing anybody else in the role, and it was a big factor. Well, I think I learned, I think I learned a lot from him. You learn a lot from everyone. You can learn from everyone. But from him, I learned a lot as an actor. I learned a lot as a human being. I learned a tremendous amount, because he's not, besides the fact that he is probably the most important actor of the last, I don't know, century or two, he has an incredible brain. His mind is, he's been very supportive in a lot of ways like that. And, it was really strange. I didn't expect him to stand up for me. And, I never expect anyone to, but when he did, I was very touched by that. And he was very generous with his advice. He gave me a lot of advice, and not only about the business, but about life and living and relationships and health. If I spread it around, it wouldn't be mine anymore, would it? I mean, you know what I mean? It's some very personal things. He was. I can just say that he was a very strong and important person for me.